Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, and a good opportunity to talk about autonomous networks, which is a topic that we spend a lot of time on, and there's an exciting momentum in the industry.
The interest has been there for a very long time, right? The aspiration, the vision has definitely been there. Maybe it's good also to take a step back and define what is an autonomous network. The way I think about it, automated networks, they do what you tell them. Autonomous networks understand, learn, adapt to an external environment, and then steer towards a business outcome. And that's all AI.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the feedback we get sometimes is that it's still quite abstract. And I think it's helpful to talk about who is it for? What's the value with autonomous networks? And I guess we talk about it from two angles. One being the values for consumer and for enterprises, where you can actually have a zero touch, zero time, zero wait type of experience. And the second part, of course, is from the operator perspective, especially from the operation side of looking at zero touch operations for the network, much lower time to maintain the network, to make changes, but also, of course, higher quality and higher network performance as well.
You are able to achieve a lot more with a lot less, but also an autonomous network is a network that stays optimized for a much longer period. You don't need to intervene manually, you don't need to optimize it. The network performance is very close to the optimal level. Obviously that translates into a better customer and end user experience, which is something which is directly monetizable.
I agree. And maybe if we talk then about autonomy as the destination, there are a few areas or stations that needs to be there in place along the way. And we have three areas that are important. One is, of course, intent. Second one being AI that we talked about. And thirdly then, openness. So maybe we try and unbox them. And if we start with intent.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really important to emphasize the importance of all three of them together, right? Because if one is missing, you don't get end-to-end autonomy. You get isolated pockets of automation. But if you take intent, right? Intent is how we move from configuration to describing outcomes. How do we move towards specifying a wanted outcome that is understandable to the network so that AI can then understand, decompose, and steer towards? To do that, you need a clear separation of concerns, right? We need to break down intent into a few different layers. First is obviously business, right? Put simply, a business intent is what you sell. It's offers and it's bundles. A service intent is the service assurance. What service do you offer? And then the resource intent is the resource layer is what you configure, what you actually configure at the end of the day. So intent must really flow end to end, because again, if it's not end to end, then you get isolated autonomy, which doesn't really enable you to connect your business outcomes to the resources that you need to configure and manage in the network.
Well, the second must-have is AI, and we've talked about AI for a few years with AI for networks. So what's the key change now with talking about AI for autonomous networks and especially agentic such?
One is that AI has evolved to the point where it can decompose intent into what is the next best plan for action given the environment and the live network situation. And then the second is the evolution of agentic capabilities, which obviously enables us to have specialized agents, specialized AI models tackling different problems in different parts of the network, but then working together in a consistent way towards a common objective, which is the intent.
Thirdly then, and a very, very key pillar for us in our strategy is openness.
Absolutely, right? I mean, and why? Autonomy, as we discussed, is an outcome. And in order to achieve an outcome, you need to have all parts of your network working consistently together towards the intent. I mean, of course, AI can facilitate that, but you need an open way of making all the different parts work together. When we think about openness, we think about multi-domain, multi-vendor.
Which is the reality that most operators live in today.
Exactly. So that's why you need openness in your interfaces. You need a commonly agreed upon way of describing intent. Then you also need, obviously, when it comes to data, you need shared semantics as well.
This is one area with big potential for the operator. Of course, there's a lot of efficiency gain in autonomy. And that might be quite often the immediate focus to make sure how can we run the operations more efficiently. But the real benefits and the real potential really lie in the revenue side and in the customer experience side.
Yeah. So when talking about the value, both in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of business outcome, to me, I find it useful to think of a concrete example. Take any live event, for example. Take a weekend match where the venue wants to sell premium connectivity as a bundle with its VIP tickets. Now, traditionally, for an operator, this is a project that can take months. With intent-based autonomy, you can cut this cycle dramatically. You can express the business in what do you want to sell. You can let the system figure out what the service to fulfill that offer needs to be, and then it can configure the resources automatically to achieve that outcome. But then game night comes along, and then traffic spikes, and then network conditions change, and experience starts to degrade. But if you have autonomy in your network, obviously the network then can adapt in real time to changing traffic conditions and maintain the level that you sold. You're able to deliver what you sold. So, to me, autonomy is not only about making today cheaper, it's also about making new business possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's about turning the network into a dynamic platform where you can truly scale real-time differentiated connectivity and services towards the end users.
Fully agreed.
Vision and future benefits, we would like to talk about that, but what's the next step on how we start scaling this now across markets, across operators, and also across much more use cases?
The key here is to avoid seeing autonomy as a technology project. Autonomy is really an operating model evolution. It touches all aspects of governance, skills. It touches upon culture. It touches upon processes, accountability, organizational boundaries. A key concept that we use quite a lot is the concept of autonomous domains, which is sets of systems that can act autonomously within a defined governance boundary. But where do you draw that line? Every operator will choose to draw that line differently, depending on a lot of things about business reality, objectives, regulatory environment, and so on. If I were an operator right now, my strategy would be to choose what is really the highest value scenario where I want to achieve an autonomous outcome, and work with my trusted technology partner in order to take the next step. I think that's really important.
And I believe it's a potential for our customers, the operator, also maybe to reposition themselves in the ecosystem in terms of how they offer, what they offer, and how fast they offer this on the market.
Fully agree. That's why autonomous networks is such a fundamental and cornerstone part of our strategy.
Super good conversation, and we should do this more often, the unboxing. We should select the next topic.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.